There are moments in life that catch us completely off guard. Moments when everything we thought we knew suddenly shifts and our hearts are open in ways we never expected. Today's story is exactly that kind of moment. Imagine a beautiful wedding ceremony. The room filled with loved ones, laughter, and the quiet hope of a new beginning. Everything seems perfect. The bride in her stunning gown, the groom ready to promise forever, and the guests waiting for the happy union. But then, suddenly, a man stands up and stops the ceremony. The music fades, the chatter dies down, and all eyes turn toward him. He is a billionaire, a man known to the world for his success, power, and influence. But what nobody knows is that he's about to do something no one expects. He is going to interrupt a wedding to save a woman's life, a woman who once saved his. Years before this moment, their lives had briefly crossed in a small-town cafe, in a moment of desperation and kindness. That moment stayed with him all these years, a memory that never left his heart. What happened that day in the cafe? Why is he standing there now, halting this grand celebration? And how will this one act change both their lives forever? Before we dive deeper, I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever experienced a chance encounter that changed everything? Maybe a stranger's kindness that stayed with you? Or maybe you have been that stranger, unknowingly touching someone's life in a profound way. If you can relate, type yes in the comments right now. And if you haven't yet, stay with me, because this story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest moments become the greatest turning points. So, let's rewind time and travel back to that quiet, unassuming town, to a humble cafe where a chance meeting would set a story in motion. Are you ready? Let's begin. The town was small, quiet, the kind of place where days unfold slowly and people greet each other by name. There was a gentle rhythm to life here, untouched by the chaos of the city. The streets were lined with familiar faces, and tucked on a corner was a modest cafe, a refuge from the outside world. Clara Bennett worked there, a young woman in her early 30s with soft chestnut hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her hazel eyes held a warmth that made even strangers feel at ease, but beneath that kindness was a subtle, quiet weariness. Each day, Clara woke before dawn, rising from a small, modest apartment where the walls bore the marks of years, and the heating barely kept the cold at bay. Her life was far from easy. She worked not just to pay the bills, but to support her aging parents and 2 younger siblings, a family weighed down by financial struggles and whispered worries. Despite the long hours on her feet and the constant balancing act of work and family, Clara never lost her kindness. She greeted every customer with a genuine smile, offering a bit of light in their day, even when hers was clouded with worry. On this particular afternoon, the cafe hummed with its usual quiet activity. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional laughter of regulars. Then the door opened. Ethan Cole stepped inside, a man who, on any other day, would have commanded attention simply by his presence. Tall, with sharp features and dark hair, he was the image of confidence and success. But today was different. His skin was pale, his shoulders slumped, and the usual sparkle in his eyes was gone. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on him, making every step feel heavier than the last. He took a seat near the window, barely registering the curious glances from other patrons. Clara noticed immediately something about him, his vulnerability, the way his hands trembled slightly as he lifted his glass. Pulled at her heart, she approached cautiously, her voice gentle. "Are you okay? Would you like some water?" Ethan tried to respond with a nod, but his strength was fading fast. Suddenly, without warning, he collapsed to the floor. The cafe fell silent. Claire was at his side in an instant, heart pounding. She called emergency services, staying with him, whispering words of comfort. "Stay with me," she urged softly. "Help is coming." She held his hand, her calm presence a lifeline in his storm. As the ambulance arrived and paramedics took over, Clara felt a strange connection, a bond forged in that fragile moment of crisis. Though they were strangers, something about this brief encounter would linger, a moment that neither would forget. In that small town cafe, a life was saved, not by chance, but by the quiet courage of a woman who gave everything she had in that moment. And for Ethan, That day marked the beginning of a story that would come full circle years later. As the ambulance's flashing lights faded into the distance, Clara stood just outside the cafe, her heart still racing. Inside, the patrons slowly resumed their conversations, but the atmosphere was forever changed. That brief, urgent moment had left a mark on everyone, especially on Clara and Ethan. When the paramedics rushed Ethan away, he was pale and fragile, but still conscious enough to grasp Clara's hand briefly. His grip was weak, but the gratitude in his eyes was unmistakable. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered, voice barely audible. Clara shook her head gently, her own voice calm but filled with quiet strength. "Just take care of yourself. That's all I ask." It wasn't a grand gesture, no heroic declaration, just simple, heartfelt words. Ethan had offered her money, a sum that could have meant the world to Clara and her family. But she refused, not out of pride, but out of belief that kindness wasn't something to be bought. This exchange stayed with Ethan in the days that followed, echoing through his mind amidst the chaos of his demanding life. He often thought about that small cafe, the exhausted waitress who had saved him without hesitation. Despite his wealth and power, he felt something genuine had been missing, a human connection that Clara's kindness had briefly restored. Yet, as the days turned to weeks, Ethan struggled to find her again. He asked around the town, visited the cafe, but Clara was elusive, a humble woman living a quiet life, far removed from his world of skyscrapers and boardrooms. Meanwhile, Clara returned to her daily routine, working long hours, caring for her family, unaware of the impact she made on a man who would one day change her life forever. She didn't seek recognition or thanks. To her, helping someone in need was simply the right thing to do. But fate, it seemed, had more in store for them. Has there ever been a moment in your life when a stranger's kindness changed everything? A moment so simple, yet so profound, it stayed with you forever? If so, think about that now. Because sometimes, those moments are the ones that quietly shape our destinies. Years passed. Ethan Cole's life transformed in ways he had never imagined. From the fragile, exhausted man who had collapsed in that small-town cafe, he rose to become one of the youngest and most successful self-made billionaires the world had ever seen. His days were now filled with board meetings, business deals, and philanthropic ventures. His name was known across continents. His face graced magazine covers and billboards. But amid the glitz, the relentless pace, and the high stakes, one memory never left him. The memory of a kind-hearted waitress who had saved his life with nothing but quiet courage and compassion. That day in the cafe replayed in his mind over and over. Her gentle eyes, the way she held his hand, her refusal to take his money, and the simple words she spoke. "Just take care of yourself." In the years that followed, Ethan often wondered about her. He tried to find her, asked around the town, returned to the cafe. But Clara remained just out of reach, living her humble life away from the spotlight. Then one afternoon, an elegant envelope arrived at his office, an invitation to a wedding. It was from Marcus Reed, a respected business associate, inviting him to celebrate the union of two families in a grand ceremony. Ethan almost set aside. Weddings were not his usual scene. But something about the invitation stirred a deep, unshakable feeling inside him, a whisper from the past that beckoned him forward. He accepted. The day of the wedding arrived, and Ethan prepared with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit, he looked into the mirror and thought back to that cafe, to the woman whose kindness had changed everything. Arriving at the venue, a magnificent estate filled with elegant guests, the scent of fresh flowers and the soft hum of excitement, Ethan scanned the crowd. Then, suddenly, he saw her. Clara. She stood at the altar, radiant in her gown but pale, her smile fragile, her eyes searching. Their eyes met. A spark of recognition, surprise, and unspoken emotions passing between them in an instant. But as Ethan looked closer, he noticed the weight she carried, the strain hidden behind her grace, the sadness she tried so hard to hide. In that moment, he knew this wedding was no ordinary celebration. It was a crossroads, a moment that would change both their lives forever. Have you ever felt a moment where the past and present collide? When a memory so vivid reaches out and pulls you into a new reality? Hold on to that feeling as we move deeper into this story. Because what happens next will remind us all the power of courage, kindness, and the will to fight for freedom. Clara stood beneath the grand chandelier, the delicate lace of her wedding dress cascading softly around her feet. The room shimmered with crystal glasses, fragrant flowers, and the low murmur of guests, but all of it felt like a distant echo to her. Inside, a storm raged. Her smile was flawless, rehearsed, a beautiful mask perfected over years of hardship. But behind those eyes, a quiet desperation flickered. She was beautiful, undeniably so, pale porcelain skin, soft chestnut hair styled carefully, lips gently tinted pink. Yet no amount of makeup or silk could hide the weariness carved into her spirit. As the center of attention, she was supposed to glow with joy. Instead, every smile felt forced, every laugh hollow. The wedding was not a celebration of love. It was a contract, a binding promise made to pay off her family's crushing debts she had carried silently for years. The Harper family, wealthy and influential, had demanded this union. Lucas, her groom, was a man she barely knew, a symbol of her family's desperation more than a partner in life. She had said yes. To this day, under pressure, she could neither refuse nor escape. Around her, guests exchanged polite glances, unaware of the pain hidden behind her poised exterior. Clara's thoughts raced back to her parents' worried faces, the late-night conversations about bills, loans, and impossible payments. She had taken every extra shift at the cafe, sold what little she owned, all to keep the family afloat. But it wasn't enough. Her family's debts had grown, and this marriage was their last hope. In the quiet corners of the reception hall, Clara overheard fragments of conversations that chilled her soul. She's marrying for the money. That's all this is. They say the Harper family demanded this match. It's about settling scores, not love. These whispers floated through the air like invisible chains, tightening around her heart. Ethan, watching from across the room, noticed the way Clara's shoulders slumped just a fraction when no one was looking. He saw the flicker of tears she blinked away, the trembling in her hands as she tried to steady her nerves. For a woman who once saved his life, the sight was unbearable. He remembered the strength behind her kindness, a strength now dimmed by years of sacrifice and pain. But in that moment, as he stood among the guests, he felt a rising determination, a fierce need to be the light in her darkness. Ethan knew this wedding was more than a celebration. It was a crossroads, and he wasn't willing to let Clara walk that path alone. As the ceremony continued, Clara fought to hold herself together, the weight of her situation pressing heavier with every passing second. She thought of the quiet nights lying awake, wondering if she would ever have a chance to choose her own destiny. Her heart longed for freedom, for a life where she could smile without fear, laugh without regret, and live without chains. But the room closed in on her, a gilded cage of obligation and sacrifice. Yet even in the darkest moments, a small flicker of hope remained. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you, one voice to break the silence, one act of courage to change everything. The grand hall sparkled with elegance, towering floral arrangements, shimmering crystal chandeliers casting warm, golden light, and rows of guests dressed in their finest. The air was thick with expectation and polite excitement, but beneath the surface, a quiet tension lingered, almost imperceptible, yet palpable to those paying close attention. Clara moved down the aisle with practiced grace. Every step in her delicate heels was measured, every smile carefully curated. Her eyes flickered nervously, searching the crowd for a sign of comfort, a familiar face, a reassuring gaze. She caught Ethan's eyes for a fleeting moment. Recognition flashed between them like a spark. Yet she quickly looked away, swallowing the surge of emotion threatening to spill. The ceremony began with solemn vows, the kind spoken with rehearsed words and hopeful promises. The officiant's voice echoed through the hall, but Clara barely heard the words. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. Fear, resignation, longing. She glanced at Lucas, standing beside her. His expression was tight, his jaw clenched, eyes cold and distant. There was no tenderness there, no shared joy, just a binding agreement. As they exchanged rings, Clara's fingers trembled slightly. She forced herself to smile, but it was a fragile thing, A flicker of light barely held steady against a gathering storm. Guests murmured polite congratulations, their applause warm but subdued, as if sensing the fragile facade beneath. When the ceremony ended, the reception began, a swirl of sparkling wine, gentle laughter, and the hum of conversations. Family and friends took turns raising their glasses for toasts, each speech layered with careful words that praised the couple and celebrated their future. But beneath the polished phrases, Ethan heard something else, a strained undertone, a desperate attempt to maintain appearances. A distant cousin whispered, "She's not happy. No one believes this is a real marriage." An aunt murmured, "It's for the family's sake." She had no choice. Ethan's gaze kept returning to Clara. He noticed how she flinched at certain comments, how she gripped her bouquet tightly, knuckles white. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths. Inside, Ethan battled his own turmoil. The man who once owed his life to Clara was now witnessing her trapped in a gilded cage. Every word in those toasts felt like a weight pressing down on her. He wrestled with the question, should he intervene now or wait for the perfect moment? The longer he watched, the clearer it became. Clara needed him, needed someone to break the silence and fight for her freedom. For every smile she forced, every laugh that didn't reach her eyes, Ethan felt his resolve deepen. The moment to act was coming. The room buzzed with polite conversation and clinking glasses, but for Ethan, time seemed to slow. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a turning point. The room hummed with polite applause as the final toast wrapped up. Crystal glasses chimed and soft chatter resumed. Yet, Ethan's eyes never left Clara. He saw through the carefully maintained facade, the forced smiles, the subtle tremor in her hands, the silent pain etched in her gaze. Inside, something shifted. A surge of gratitude and protectiveness ignited deep within him. Memories flooding back of the days she saved his life, without expecting anything in return. The weight of what she was enduring now felt unbearable. For years, he had carried a memory of her kindness like a beacon. Now, that beacon guided his heart and conscience. With deliberate calm, Ethan stood. The scraping of his chair against the polished floor cut sharply through the murmurs, drawing a hush over the guests. All eyes turned toward him. The room fell into a tense silence, a fragile stillness pregnant with anticipation. Ethan approached the microphone slowly, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone reverent yet firm, "I'd like to speak from my heart." His gaze met Clara's, a silent reassurance, a promise that she was not alone. Years ago, I found myself broken and lost, exhausted beyond words, in a small cafe in a quiet town. And it was this incredible woman right here, he gestured gently toward Clara, who saved my life. A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Some guests exchanged confused glances. Others leaned forward, intrigued. He continued, voice unwavering. "She didn't save me for fame, fortune, or recognition. She didn't even accept my thanks or help. She only asked that I take care of myself, a simple act of kindness that changed everything for me." Clara's eyes filled with tears, her breath catching in her throat. She looked down, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. Ethan's voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. "Today, I have learned that this brave woman is standing here, forced into a marriage she never chose, trapped by debts and pressures she never deserved." His words echoed, clear and resolute. "I cannot and will not allow that to happen. I owe her my life, and now I am here to return the favor." With deliberate motion, he pulled a check from his jacket pocket and held it high for all to see. "This will clear her family's debts today, so she can be free to decide her own future." A stunned silence fell over the room. Guests blinked, mouths slightly open. The groom, Lucas, flushed red with rage. Without a word, he stormed toward the exit, knocking over a chair in his haste. Clara's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Tears of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. Ethan stepped down from the stage and approached her gently. He draped his jacket over her shoulders, the fabric warm and heavy, a symbol of protection and hope. Their eyes met once again, no words needed. The room remained silent, holding its breath as two lives, one stranger's, became forever intertwined by courage, kindness, and a promise of freedom. For Clara, this moment was more than salvation. It was a first step toward reclaiming her life. For Ethan, it was a fulfillment of a debt far greater than money, a debt repaid with respect, love, and unwavering support. The guests watched, stunned, as the truth had finally been spoken, and a new story began. The stunned silence after Ethan's dramatic announcement seemed to stretch endlessly. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Then, suddenly, the groom, Lucas, stormed toward the exit, his face flushed with anger, his steps heavy and harsh against the polished floor. He knocked over a chair as he left, his fury echoing through the once celebratory hall. Guests exchanged shocked, uneasy glances. The tension thickened, buzzing quietly beneath whispered conversations. Some eyes turned to Clara, while others focused on Ethan, tried to grasp what had just unfolded. But Clara wasn't paying attention to the shocked crowd. Her world had narrowed to one thing: the jacket Ethan draped gently around her shoulders. The warmth of the fabric contrasted sharply with the cold weight that had pressed on her heart for so long. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. Tears not of sorrow alone, but a release so profound it felt as though years of silent suffering were washing away. She sank slowly into a nearby chair, her body trembling. The years of sacrifice, the forced smiles, the endless burden of family debts, all lifted in that moment like a heavy fog dissipating under the morning sun. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice soft and steady. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said. "You're free now, free to choose who you want to be." Clara looked up, her eyes searching for truth, for reassurance. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with hope. "I never thought this day would come." Around them, the guests began murmuring again, some in disbelief, others in awe. The room that had felt like a cage was now alive with the possibility of change. Clara slowly rose, barefoot, clutching her shoes in one hand, a quiet but powerful symbol of stepping away from a life that was never truly hers. She took tentative steps toward the grand windows where sunlight streamed in, bathing her in golden light. Ethan matched her pace, offering silent support. The sunlight touched her face, revealing the genuine smile that had been buried beneath years of fear. It was a smile that spoke of freedom, of new beginnings, and a hope rekindled. This moment was not just an escape. It was a rebirth. As they stood there, side by side, Ethan's jacket around her shoulders, Clara felt for the first time in a long while that she was seen, truly seen and valued, not for what she owed, but for who she was. The crowd's whispers softened, and some guests even looked on with respect and admiration. It was clear this was more than just a scandal. It was a story of courage, of kindness repaid, and of one woman reclaiming her life against all odds. The stunned silence after Ethan's dramatic announcement seemed to stretch endlessly. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Then, suddenly, the groom, Lucas, stormed toward the exit, his face flushed with anger, his steps heavy and harsh against the polished floor. He knocked over a chair as he left, his fury echoing through the once celebratory hall. Guests exchanged shocked, uneasy glances. The tension thickened, buzzing quietly beneath whispered conversations. Some eyes turned to Clara, while others focused on Ethan, trying to grasp what had just unfolded. But Clara wasn't paying attention to the shocked crowd. Her world had narrowed to one thing: the jacket Ethan draped gently around her shoulders. The warmth of the fabric contrasted sharply with the cold weight that had pressed on her heart for so long. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. Tears not of sorrow alone, but a release so profound it felt as though years of silent suffering were washing away. She sank slowly into a nearby chair, her body trembling. The years of sacrifice, the forced smiles, the endless burden of family debts, all lifted in that moment like a heavy fog dissipating under the morning sun. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice soft and steady. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said. "You're free now, free to choose who you want to be." Clara looked up, her eyes searching for truth, for reassurance. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with hope. "I never thought this day would come." Around them, the guests began murmuring again, some in disbelief, others in awe. The room that had felt like a cage was now alive with the possibility of change. Clara slowly rose, barefoot, clutching her shoes in one hand, a quiet but powerful symbol of stepping away from a life that was never truly hers. She took tentative steps toward the grand windows where sunlight streamed in, bathing her in golden light. Ethan matched her pace, offering silent support. The sunlight touched her face, revealing the genuine smile that had been buried beneath years of fear. It was a smile that spoke of freedom, of new beginnings, and of hope rekindled. This moment was not just an escape. It was a rebirth. As they stood there, side by side, Ethan's jacket around her shoulders, Clara felt for the first time in a long while that she was seen, truly seen, and valued, not for what she owed, but for who she was. The crowd's whispers softened, and some guests even looked on with respect and admiration. It was clear this was more than just a scandal. It was a story of courage, of kindness repaid, and of one woman reclaiming her life against all odds. Clara's bare feet felt the cool, smooth marble beneath her as she stepped out of the grand hall and into the warm sunlight pouring through the open doors. Every step was a quiet rebellion, a deliberate shedding of the chains that had bound her for so long. The shoes she held loosely in her hand were more than just footwear. They were symbols of the life she was leaving behind. The long days filled with worry, the nights consumed by fear, the endless sacrifices made silently and without complaint. Her skin glowed softly in the sunlight, pale yet radiant, a delicate contrast to the dark, heavy past that she had carried like a shadow. Beside her, Ethan walked with a calm certainty. His dark hair caught the light, his eyes steady and filled with a gentle strength. He draped his jacket carefully over her shoulders, the weight a comforting promise that she was no longer alone. For a moment, neither spoke. Words felt inadequate compared to the flood of emotions rising between them. Clara's heart pounded, not with fear, but with hope. For the first time in years, she could breathe freely. She glanced up at Ethan, her eyes shimmering with tears of relief, gratitude, and something deeper, the courage to dream again. "I never thought I'd have this chance," she whispered. Ethan smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You deserve it," he said simply. "You deserve to live for yourself, not for others' debts or demands." They walked slowly through the sunlit garden, the world around them bursting with life. Birds chirping, flowers blooming, the gentle rustled leaves in the breeze. Each moment was a new beginning. Clara thought of the years she had lived in shadows, the dreams she had buried deep inside, and the future she could now begin to shape. No longer a prisoner of circumstance, she felt a quiet strength rising within. Ethan's presence was steady, a constant reminder that kindness and courage could forge a path out of darkness. As they reached the garden gate, Clara turned to look back once more, not with regret, but with a solemn promise to herself and to the life ahead. "I'm ready," she said, voice firm but tender. Ethan nodded, his own eyes reflecting pride and hope. Together, they stepped beyond the gate, into a world where freedom, love, and new beginnings awaited. And as the sun set softly behind them, it painted the sky with colors of possibility. Because sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with a single, brave step. Life has a mysterious way of weaving together moments, threads of chance, kindness, and courage that form stories far greater than the sum of their parts. Ethan and Clara's story is one of those rare threads. It reminds us that even in a world full of uncertainty and hardship, simple acts of compassion can echo through time, changing lives in ways we often cannot foresee. Think back to the small town cafe, that quiet afternoon when Clara chose kindness over convenience. She didn't know who Ethan was. She didn't care about his wealth or status. All she saw was a man in need. That choice, to stop, to help, to stay, was a quiet rebellion against a world that often turns its back on strangers. For Ethan, that moment became a lifeline, a beacon that pulled him back from the brink. But more than that, it became a reminder of what truly matters. Years later, fate drew them back together, not by chance, but by a silent promise carried in their hearts. Their reunion was more than coincidence. It was a testament to the power of kindness and the human spirit. We all have those moments, don't we? Moments when a stranger's kindness changed the course of our lives, or when our own actions made a difference beyond measure. Sometimes we forget how powerful those moments can be. But Ethan and Clara's story asks us to remember To hold tight to the belief that no act of kindness is ever wasted, that courage to stand up for what's right can break chains, and that every one of us has the power to make a difference. So I ask you now, who in your life needs your kindness today? What small act could you offer that might change a life? Share your thoughts below, your stories, your reflections, because when we come together to share kindness, courage, and hope, we create ripples that spread far beyond what we imagine. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for believing in the power of human connection. And remember, sometimes the smallest moments are the most profound. Thank you for staying with me through this incredible journey, a story of courage, kindness, and the extraordinary power of human connection. Ethan and Clara's story is a vivid reminder that sometimes the smallest moments, a simple act of compassion, a courageous stand, can change everything. It's a testament to the fact that no matter who we are, where we come from, or the challenges we face, kindness has the power to break barriers and rewrite destinies. Think about your own life for a moment. Has there been someone who reached out to you when you needed it most? Or perhaps you've been the one to offer hope when it felt like there was none left. These moments, though they may seem small or fleeting, leave an indelible mark, a ripple that spreads far beyond what we realize. And today, I want to invite you to be part of this ripple. Take a moment now, in the comments below, and share your own stories, times when kindness changed your life, or when you found the courage to stand up for yourself or someone else. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs to hear. This channel is more than just stories. It's a community where we support each other, where kindness and courage inspire us all to be better. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and joining us on this journey of hope and humanity. And if you found this story as moving as I did, please give a like and share it with someone who might need a reminder of the power of kindness today. Remember, no act of kindness is ever wasted. No courage ever goes unnoticed. You have the power to make a difference, to change a life, sometimes without even knowing it. So, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for believing in the best of humanity. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and never forget, your kindness matters.